was always the Jags.
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 Welcome into Always the Jags. This is your podcast where you get everything Jacksonville, everything Jaguars, everything Duval. The Jaguars continue to roll. I mean, what else can be said that hasn't already been said? We are rolling. We just powered through the Indianapolis Colts, swept them for the second time in Trevor Lawrence's career. And again, Trevor Lawrence has had some up and downs, but where the way he's dominated AFC opponents, the AFC South rivals, and the Colts and the Titans. Like, again, this hopefully next week we'll have our second sweep of the Titans. Or is that our third sweep of the Titans? And Trevor Lawrence still only has 1 or 2 losses to the Titans, I think. It's 1 or 2. And again, it's just an incredible spot to be in. And this Jaguars team, he has 2 losses to the Titans, I just remembered. Yeah, 1 in 21 and 1 in 23. This Jaguars team has found new identity and new life. And Liam Cohen is just, he's the reason why. More so than anything. More so than Trevor Lawrence, more so it's Liam Cohen. And that's I said it on another episode later on. Well, we'll get into that. First of all, let's break down this Colts game. First of all, I know the Colts don't have their quarterback, but going into a division rival stadium and beating them is never easy. Just ask the Pittsburgh Steelers. What just happened to them? They got beat by the Browns, who, I mean, technically you could say they have their starting quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, but it's not like he lit it up or has been lighting it up. You know, their starting quarterback this year was Joe Flacco. They don't have him anymore. So, like, let's not downplay this win for what it was. And again, the game was close. Phillip Rivers knows what he's doing on a football field. It's just that simple. Phillip Rivers knows what he's doing. And sure, his body is probably failing him in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that he can't quite do. There's 2 plays I'll highlight in this game that, you know, with a different quarterback, this game could have been different. Or, I mean, it was still close, but it was a very weird game. So, in the first half, whatever adjustments Anthony Campanile made in the second half really made a difference. Because in the first half, if you look at the stats closely, for the first 2 quarters, there were only a total of 5 drives, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6 drives. Because the Colts started with the ball, and they had such a methodical clock-killing drive because Rivers was throwing it short and Jonathan Taylor was running the ball. And our run defense was kind of struggling. Jonathan Taylor was picking up 5-6 yards per rush. In the first half, we were kind of struggling there a little bit with that. And Rivers was kind of dunking his way down the field. And then when the Jaguars offense came on, and I think they ended up in the field goal. So it was very bend but don't break. So they got a field goal. As Trevor Lawrence stepped on the field, he was perfect on that very first drive. Bam, bam, shot. I don't even think he had an incompletion on that first drive. And, you know, the run game was working, and we were just moving down the field. We were looking like we were going to score a touchdown until that ill-fated fumble that allowed the Colts to get another possession. And then again, another methodical clock-killing drive to take it all the way down to the end zone where they ended up getting a Jonathan Taylor touchdown. So questionable penalties on that, but, you know, whatever. And those drives took off so much clock, right? So then the next drive we had that ended up being a touchdown drive, we were able to move the ball down the field with Trevor Lawrence again and go score a touchdown. I think that was the one he ran it in because the way he's using his legs right now is kind of a difference maker, but this is the Clemson Trevor Lawrence because Clemson Trevor Lawrence uses his legs all the time. And like, I think that's something that Liam Cohen wasn't doing at the beginning of the year. I don't think Urban Meyer wanted him to run because he doesn't like when his quarterbacks run as much, which is weird though because he coached Tim Tebow at UF. So I don't know. Maybe in the NFL he felt differently. And Doug Peterson definitely was not like I like my quarterbacks to run. Liam Cohen is I like my quarterbacks to win. So let's go do that. Now again, Trevor's got to be careful. You know, Lamar Jackson is showing a lot of injuries. Kyler Murray runs a lot and he's been hurt a lot and his play is really starting to be affected by it. But again, Trevor is not a running quarterback. He's a quarterback who can run. Two different things. He's a quarterback who can run, so you always have to respect his legs. And you can always pick up those little bit of yards and be that last guy on the field that can go and pick up some yards. So, anyway, so Trevor ran it in, and then I believe we forced another punt. We forced our first punt by the Colts, and then the Jaguars had the ball with the chance to go tie it into the half. That was only our third possession, and there was only like a minute, maybe 2 minutes left in the quarter, in the first half. So, like, this game looks like it was like almost low scoring and like almost close, but the Colts, they did a good job of controlling possession. And that's something that Anthony Campanile realized and adjusted in the second half, because the Colts were dominating time of possession with those two incredibly long drives. And you look at the yards, again, our yards at one point, we doubled the Colts. We had 342 yards to their 170. And so it was very clear that Jacksonville was the better team. The Colts just capitalized on some turnovers. And that's what you have to do. And that's what we did early in the season. Capitalized on our turnovers to maybe punch above our weight class and beat teams like the San Francisco 49ers or even like the Chiefs, which looks more like we were in a different weight class than them. But that's what we did. And then Trevor had a really good looking drive that looked like it was going to end up in a touchdown or at least a field goal. And then that throw, again, we hadn't seen a lot of red zone interceptions from Trevor. And that throw just... Jermaine Pratt, here's my thing about that throw. Jermaine Pratt made a great play because in general, if you're a quarterback and your receiver's looking back at you and the defensive back is looking at the receiver trying to catch up and they haven't gotten turned around, that's a good throw to make, right? You want the defensive backs, you want the defensive player's back to be to you. So Trevor Lawrence threw it. The problem is there's only so much runway at the back of the end zone before you go out of bounds. So Parker Washington had to slow up at least a little bit for the ball to get to him. Otherwise, it would have been out of bounds. And that allowed Jermaine Pratt to turn around. And literally, he turned around and the ball fell in his breadbasket, and he just caught it. It was a great play by him, and it was a great awareness in time for him. Because I guess maybe he was looking at Parker Washington's eyes and saw Parker Washington's eyes go up to see the ball coming in, and that's when he turned around. But whatever instinct got him to turn around, it ended up being a great play. And so it was more of a good play by him than a bad play on Trevor's part. But again, the part that we'll criticize and be like, I don't know about this play, is that he had Brenton Strange splitting two safeties. And there's a certain window where if he throws that ball, he has Brenton Strange for a touchdown right there. And that would have completely changed the dynamic of the game. And that, I mean, we still ended up winning, don't get me wrong. But that would have been like, yeah, the better team is here now. You know, kind of like, oh, yeah. And also it would have been points on every drive that wasn't a turnover. And in the first half, the Jaguars got points on every drive that wasn't a turnover, you know. So, but that's why turnovers are important. They're just as bad as punts. I mean, they're worse than punts because you end up getting good field position and taking points off the board. So that took 3 points off the board for us, and we didn't get a chance to tie it. Then we go into the second half. Anthony Campanile really bottled up that run. And once he bottled up that run, the Colts offense struggled. They were only able to put up, I think we got the ball to start the second half, and then we scored another touchdown to go up 14-10. And again, had we scored right before the half, it could have been 21-10, and that would have been like, yeah, okay. Sorry, guys. It's over. It would have been a chance to double up. But 14-10, Colts are still in it. Colts get down there, and he throws a touchdown pass to Mo Alley-Cox, 17-14. That was a good pass. It was a good play design. I saw it coming from a mile away. I said, you know, make sure that our linebacker, someone's on him. And Greg Newsome tried to make a play on the ball. He just couldn't. So, but then Jaguars, led by Trevor Lawrence, go right down the field and get a field goal. And then we go and get another one to make it 2017. There was a decision in there on 4th and 1.5 or 1 7 3/4. I would have taken the points there. I don't think I would have gone for it because, again, that's 4th and 2 essentially. Like the stats say 4th and 1. Oh, go for it, analytics. But where the ball was placed, like if this is a yard, this is where the 4th and 1 was. It was much longer than a yard. It was like a yard and 3/4, I would say. And I think in that case, you need to round up and be like 4th and 2. And again, 4th and a yard, Trevor's body is long enough to stretch out and get a yard. Everybody can get a yard. Getting 2 yards is a little different. That's why 2-point conversions. That's why 2-point conversions are worth 2 points instead of a extra point, just kicking and getting the extra point. So it's not as easy, and that's why whenever you get a penalty, and it allows you to, and you could take it and go for 2 points instead of a 1-pointer. Teams do that because getting 1 yard is a lot easier than getting 2. And essentially, Liam Cohen was going for it on 4th and 2. It looked like 4th and 1, but that was 4th and 2. It was closer. It was closer to being 2 yards than it was to being 1 yard. And so that I would have just kicked the field goal, taken the points. We would have went up 2017. Now it worked out because we were able to force the punt and go down and get another field goal. But again, that's the kind of timing where I think in the playoffs, that kind of mistake isn't going to work. And like, again, Trevor Lawrence throwing that red zone interception. Again, not necessarily him throwing the red zone interception, but him missing Brenton Strange down the seam and instead throwing a red zone interception. Again, not going to work in the playoffs. I'm amazed how teams still treat Brian Thomas Jr. like he's the number 1 wide receiver. And I guess that's because they don't want him to go deep on them and throw. And he had a pretty good game. I mean, he did. To me, again, he's doing his job of stretching the field, and he's not a diva that's like, I need the ball every single play. Neither is Jacoby Myers, neither is Parker Washington. We don't have any A.J. Browns on this team, which I love, and that's what makes the whole operation work. There was one play where Brian Thomas Jr. was deep, and Trevor just missed him, and he had his guy beat. And I don't know if Brian Thomas Jr. slowed up, but you would like to see, like, it looks like he slowed up when he realized the ball was too far away. But you would like to see a player like speeding up and putting in that extra effort and at least reaching for it. I think that does a little bit more for everybody, because I still think Brian Thomas Jr. is heart in it. I still think he wants to play and he wants to be that big threat guy. And again, if we hit that touchdown, that is great day from Brian Thomas Jr., great day from Trevor Lawrence. Wow, the Jags are just a juggernaut. And now it kind of looks like we survived the Colts, right? So, those big plays will end up making the difference. Again, in the playoffs, that's a play that you're going to need back. That's a play that you're going to need to win. That Brenton Strange touchdown, that's the play that we're going to need to win. This game could have been like 35 points. Those are plays that we're going to need. And Sauce Gardner was back, and he's a good cornerback. And DeForest Buckner definitely made his presence felt. But again, the Jaguars are just a better team. It's just that simple. And so a couple more decisions that I wasn't really sure about. On the 4th and 1, where it was time to like run out the clock and kind of get us in a better position to kick that field goal and make sure the Colts had no time left, I'm okay with that. That was a good move because it was 4th and 1, and Trevor made the right move by going into the C gap, protecting the ball, and going down after getting the yard. That was the right call. Now, I will say there was one play where we picked up 8 yards, and there was a false start on the Colts. And it was 2nd and 2. And we could have taken the penalty and, got an extra 5 yards and 1st and 10. And we declined it, I guess, because taking the penalty stops the clock. I still think I end up taking the penalty, especially based upon what happened after that. Because I was watching it, I was like, take the penalty. And then the next play, we lost some yards. And then I think the next play we had a false start. And we had a 2nd and 2 where we had a penalty that would have gone to 1st and 10 became a 3rd and 11. 3rd and 11. Because I think we lost yards and then we had a penalty, so it moved it back to 3rd and 11. That is, it's like, you don't want that. Take the yards. Take the free yards. Take the free yards that they caused by the penalty. And yes, it's going to stop the clock, but now you got 4 more downs. You get another 1st down, the game is over. So we didn't take it. But then Trevor Lawrence showed us why he's getting paid $55 million, and Jacoby Myers showed us why he's getting paid $20 million with a incredible throw and catch for 10 yards. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's the stuff that puts fear into defenses when it's like, it's 3rd and long and it's still not an advantage to you because of what this guy, Trevor Lawrence, can do with weapons like Jacoby Myers. That ball was only in the place where Jacoby could get it. It was a fantastic catch. He had to leap up and alter his body and catch it with his fingertips just off the ground, pull it in right at that yard line. And at that point, especially after Jacoby Myers made that catch, that is a go for it moment because all the momentum is in your favor because your quarterback just made an incredible throw and your receiver just made an incredible catch. Now you go for it on 4th and 1 and you put your faith in the team that puts you in this position to be there. So I think that was still a good decision. And it was just phenomenal on both parts of Trevor Lawrence and Jacoby Myers. And it was in a big moment where we needed it because we really needed, because again, games are funny. Whenever you do one little thing or one little thing here, momentum can shift, especially at someone else's home crowd. Had the Colts been able to swat that pass and make it 4th and 11, or that pass, or Jacoby Myers drops it, or it just doesn't quite connect, momentum's kind of shifting towards the Colts. And the Colts are only down by 3, so they only had to go down and score 3 or go down and get a touchdown. But by doing that, I think we would have kicked a field goal, so they would have had to go get a touchdown. But again, by converting that first down, we chewed up so much time off the clock, allowed us to kick the game-winning field goal, and just really drove a stake into the heart of the fans. Now, again, I still prefer taking the penalty and getting the points. But like I said, it ended up working out. But this is one of the situations where in the playoffs against a team like the Bills or the Texans, especially against the Texans, you take the penalty and you take what yards you can get. Even if you're at the point where, okay, we can be closing out this game, you take those yards because the Texans don't give a whole lot up. The Bills aren't going to give a whole lot up. Neither are the Patriots. You got to take those yards. So this is a win on the road, and this is why, hopefully we can beat the Titans at home, and then we can make most of the playoffs have to come to our stadium, so any momentum hopefully stays on our side. But again, this kind of play on the road in the playoffs would hurt us. Against a better team, we would have lost today based upon the mistakes that were made. And again, the Colts are not a terrible team. They're a lot better than their record suggests because of their quarterback. But also, again, even if Daniel Jones is playing, if you look at the teams the Colts have lost to, the skid started before Daniel Jones went down. When he went down, it just gave them an excuse for why the skid started. But either way, losing injuries to your cornerback, your defensive tackle, the Colts were kind of already in a free spiral. So Jags were able to take advantage of it, and Trevor Lawrence still had a phenomenal day on the ground. He had no passing touchdowns, but again, 2 rushing touchdowns was enough to put us in a position to win the game. And then 3 Cam Little field goals, dude is money. And again, the fact that we have a kicker who hit a 70-yarder now in games, and teams know this, we can get in field goal range in 2 plays. In most, if you, especially some returns by DJ Dallas, who didn't have a bad game as well, replacing Bashal Tutin. Some of those returns, we were already in field goal range. And when it gets time, when these games are coming down to the wire, being in field goal range is a huge advantage for the offense because the defense wants to push you back out of field goal range, but the offense can still go and get a touchdown. So those are the kind of advantage situations that having a great kicker puts us in.